What is going on, my Atomic Cycle Works friends? Guess what? Today, this is not a motorcycle seat. This is a motorcycle tank, and we're gonna be doing a little bit of body work. When we're doing body work, if you watch our Atomic Auto Works channel, where we do body work on cars, take everything we talked about and throw it in the garbage, because motorcycles are nothing like cars. Matter of fact, if we're throwing things in the garbage, these foam blocks, right, I personally think are the biggest piece of shit there is. We shouldn't be using them. Boom, garbage. Never want to see them again. I actually am going to be using a sanding block. That's actually not the right one right here. I've had sanding blocks for 30 years. Employees now have lost everything we have, and we have to regain everything. When I'm doing motorcycle tanks, fenders, I like to use a semi-firm block. This one's a little too soft for me, but it'll do the trick to get through it. There's a couple blocks that are a little bit bigger than this, and I'm gonna show you why we're gonna use these. But first, before we get going, we're gonna go through. If you watch our automotive channel, you'll see we did a review on this body filler. Lewis did a review with us. This stuff here, going in the trash. We normally use Evercoat, but because we told our viewers we're going to try different products, when you go to Atomic Auto Works, you'll be able to see us use different fillers, which we're going to be reviewing the Evercoat 838. And we are definitely Evercoat fans. I've actually had good luck with 3M as well. We'll be doing reviews on all that body filler. Today, we're going to be using this Evercoat on this tank because bang for buck, price-wise, we're trying to match up with what the customers want to pay and the materials and all that stuff. So we're not going to spend $130 on a body filler for a tank that's not going to be even remotely in that area of using products that cost that much. But we'll show you why. We're not going to go into a big review of the product here, but if you watch the Atomic Auto Works channel, we will do a review of this and tell you the difference between this and, like, say, the Evercoat 125 Rage body filler. This is, I think, maybe a third, no, just over half the cost of what the other stuff is. Anyway, when we get started, what we do is we throw away all this shitty sandpaper. We don't need it. It doesn't need to be there. We put a garbage right next to where we're working, get everything cleaned up. I'm gonna put some rubber gloves on because, you know, since we're filming this, I don't want you to be like, hey, why don't you put some gloves on? Your hands are gonna get dirty and you don't want dirty hands. So here's the gloves. Here you go. Ugh. Oh, it's always so weird putting on rubber gloves. I like to, when I'm working, set up an area, make sure everything's clean and nice. I like to keep things where they're supposed to be. Throw those away. Let me mix up. I'm gonna use this new board here, which isn't that new because there's already shit on it and I haven't even used it yet. Clean the board first. Body shops get dusty. You don't want dust in your body filler and your paint. So it's a constant war of cleaning. You see a lot of the new collision shops are very clean and state of the art. I would like to be there someday. But we do a lot of body filler. Most collision shops don't use a lot of body filler these days. We're gonna mix this up, right? Bada boom, bada bing. Always stir up your filler, scrape the shit off the sides, get it in there. There's resins in here that usually come to the top when these things sit. You don't know how long they've been on the shelf. And if you don't stir them up, it'll start off nice and wet on top and then be dry as shit on the bottom. So let's get this stirred up. Once it's stirred up, this paint paddle is not my friend, going in the garbage. New paint paddle. I don't need a lot of filler. Put this on, that's kind of a lot of filler. I always like to clean this off, right? Lid back on. We don't want any crap to get in there. Now, we need a little hardener here. Always need your hardener. So you always want to squeeze this around because the same thing as with the body filler, the resins go to the top. With this, it has like a paste in it. It has like a, I don't even know, MEKP usually in here. Methyl ethyl ketone peroxide is usually in here. See anything, but I'm not gonna read the whole directions because it's not that important. Just know that the liquid separates from the thick shit with the color. It's like food coloring with baby powder and a little bit of hardener in here. So you wanna squish this all together so that when you come out, the MEKP doesn't squirt out without any of the color, because if that comes out first, when you get to the bottom, you will have no hardener. So these are all shitty now, but we're going to use them. If you clean these things as you use them, they will be perfect. You should never sand them. Once you sand them, you put grooves into these things that now the body filler is going to always go into this and stick even worse, and it just progressively gets worse. So we're going to stir this filler up. I could tell you between the Rage 125, 106, 112, and all that stuff in comparison to the Chromolite body filler, this is definitely more of a lightweight porous filler. You can see it as you're doing it. When you run your paddle across here, you can see that it's a little bit more textury, more aerated. So you're going to have harder times with air bubbles than you would with the 125. But we'll do a tight wipe on it and see what happens. Always clean your tools off like this to get any of the hardener off, because you want to make sure that it's completely even. You don't want to see, if you see any dark blue, because this is blue hardener, that means you didn't stir it properly. And if you see any areas that are tan, you know you need to stir it more. With body filler, I am going to take my first coat, very barely put it on there, right? I got it on here. Oh, hold on, let me turn it over. I mixed up way too much filler. Just a little bit's on here now, right? And I'm going to drop the tank in the ground. That's what I'm going to do. So now I'm going to do a really tight pass, right? Let's get this all in the cracks. Now we're going to fill this. Everybody does it their own way. I like to mound it when I'm doing motorcycle tanks or fenders. And the reason I do so is because it's a curved surface, and when you put filler on, it has a tendency to want to go on flat. Like when you do cars, you put this stuff on flat, right? Try to work it. So I mixed up way too much filler. Hopefully this stuff sands good. I'm doing this, I'm mounding it, because usually I use the Rage 125, and that stuff sands really nice, or sometimes a 3M. So what I'm going to do is, my stuff's not dry yet. I want to make sure, because when I talk and work, sometimes I don't pay attention, and I got some over the screw holes, which I don't want. Clean this area off, because I don't want that in there. On this tank, there's like little tiny screw holes for the emblems, and the last thing you want to do is get body filler in there. And because I was working and talking, it started to go in there, and now it's out of there, right? So normally, like when I'm doing car stuff, you'll see me keep working this body filler until it's starting to harden. I just kind of want it a little thicker on this one. So we're going to take and scrape all this crud off our pallet, right? A little bit of lacquer thinner. So as I'm doing this, the body filler is hardening, and we will have a nice, new, clean surface to work with next. Edge is clean. So now if these were newish, they would still look newish. Bada boom. So now, garbage. Sanding blocks, sandpaper. I am just going to use some of this because it's in front of me. DA paper. Normally when you do body work, you want to find the biggest sanding block. You want it hard when you're doing your body work so that it cuts it flat and straight. Well, motorcycles are not flat and straight. They're curved, usually in many, many angles. This one only has a slight radius like this and a very slight radius like that. If we were to put this on flat and use a flat sanding block, every time we sand this, we're going to get a flat spot. And then you're going to put the body filler on, you're going to grab a hard sanding block, and you're going to sand it, and you're going to do a flat spot in it. So the reason we learn with the hard sanding blocks on cars is because you want to get everything flat and straight. I mean, cars do have, some curved surfaces and stuff, so you got to pay attention and not be an idiot. For the most part, getting flat and getting straight is what you want to do. Very more mechanical procedures on a motorcycle. A lot of times it's more artistic because you're using some soft blocks, you're using your hand, feeling, you got to use your brain. So this stuff here is starting to lock up a little bit. So that's good. What I like to do, I don't know how this is going to work with this body filler. I almost said Bondo. Not supposed to say Bondo. Bondo's a name brand, trademark. I always like to take a piece of sandpaper while it's just starting to tack up. Hit it while it's wet, right? Hit it while it's wet. You know what I'm talking about, guys. I did body work the old-fashioned way for a long time, right? And it wasn't for many, many years that an old-timer says, why don't you hit it when it's wet? First, I thought he was screwing with me. I thought he was going to have me do something stupid and look like an idiot. And then he showed me. When you do body work the old-school way, and even this way, where you're putting on a little thicker, a lot of times you'll take a piece of sandpaper, sometimes more aggressive than 80 grit, believe it or not, and you'll just start knocking everything off. And what this does is it gets all the high spots off while it's soft, so you're not worrying about sanding into it. Because if you have a high spot and you have to sand that down, no matter what, you're gonna sand the top of that down, but you're gonna be hitting the sides and all this other stuff. This usually cuts it off pretty quick. Not working that great with this filler. It works way better with Rage fillers, but it is working like normal. And we're just gonna go through. We're gonna feather edge a little bit the sides. Feather edging is when you have your area here, see that hard line? We just wanna take and sand this until there's no hard line, and you can see the 80 grit scratches going fluently from the body filler to the tank. We're just gonna go around and do the whole thing while this is drying. So this also rakes into the top layer of this filler and lets it breathe. So as you're doing it, you'll feel it starting to actually dry up on you, which is nice. And then you'll know when to switch from this crappy piece of paper that's gonna be slightly gummed up to your real piece of paper. Can say, as I'm doing this, I wish it was we were using the Rage on this, but sometimes we try to factor in is the price savings using the lower price chemicals and products better than the extra work you have to do to get there. I'm not a fan of the extra work in body work, especially when we have a ton of stuff to do. So you'll notice as I'm sanding, but you won't notice is there's certain things you do. You hold your hand flat, kind of like when you do a car. When you're sanding a car, palm flat, always at an angle, never like this. You do like this, you're putting finger marks in there. You'll put little tiny ridges everywhere you go. So you're always going against it using the flats of your hands. I'm doing the same thing here. I got this in my hand coupled over, and I'm just palming this. I'm just trying to go through and sand the edges here. You really want to take the edges and feather edge those first, and then sand in. You don't want to try to sand, if you sand the center to get this feather edge, flat spot, then you're gonna hit it. If you start here, you're feather edging the outside, the inside still mounded, meaning it's too high, too proud. Make sure we're feather edging it. It's starting to dry up pretty good on us here. It is gumming up the paper a wee bit. Now that this body filler is starting to dry where I could actually sand it and actually do it right, I'm gonna use this block. You can see the reason I don't like this block is it's already had, it's kind of like a little deformed, but it's foam, and we're actually not using the block to cut it flat. We're using it to kind of just give us a roundness. So I'm gonna go through and continue feather edging this edges. And as it gets closer to feather edging, you'll notice I start making bigger sanding passes, meaning when you start off small, you're trying to get it feather edge, and then now we're getting closer, so you get a little bit bigger. And I don't know if you can see, it's kind of hard, I'm trying to show you and do it, but I need to see too. So I'm just gonna continue coming in here. Now we have, let me make sure, oh, this is not feather edge yet down here. So let me feather edge this here. And what I want to do is, we know there's no dents up here, the dents here. We want to make sure that our filler is on the same plane as the original tank here. So you can see here, as we feather edge this, making sure it's not mounted too much here, which you can feel it. We're getting to a point where I could actually start feeling it. Obviously I could see that it's still low here because I didn't sand it enough. I'm gonna run my hand across here. Same thing, when you're running your hand across, you can run at angles to feel, you can do this. Some people can't feel with their hands, so they use paper towels. You put the paper towel there and they say they can feel. It doesn't work for me. I think the thickness of the paper towel is thicker than a wave I'd want in my body work. So now, let me just go through and do this. Because it's my first coat of filler, I didn't guide coat it. You can guide coat it if you want. I just knew I'd be taking off massive amounts. I wanted to get it a little closer first. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, because I have some imperfections here, we're gonna guide coat it. And I am going to show you some imperfections on here and how easy it is to see with the guide coat, right? They had a closeout of this U-POL guide coat, and U-POL. So we got a bunch of these things from one of our suppliers, and then we realized why they gave it to us. They're not spraying properly, but let's get some decent guide coat on here, and I'll show you how the guide coat works, which I know a lot of you who watch our channels know how guide coat works. We normally use the SEM or Merca, depending on what our suppliers have, guide coats in there. They have powder, they have spray, it comes in black and white. I don't know if it comes in any other color, but I do know they come in black and white. It's hard to find the white. One thing about this stuff is I find that this one doesn't dry as quick and as easy to sand as the SEM stuff we were using. So once you have your guide coat on here, whether you use the powder pounce pads or if you use the spray, like I just did, Now you're gonna take your sanding block. We're not worried about this down here yet. I'm not even concerned with that. Zero pressure, right? We're just gonna go across this with no pressure. No pressure. You put pressure on it, you're gonna put waves in it. You're not gonna see it. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna show me the money. It's gonna show me all the lows, all the highs, all that stuff. So you can see here, as we're going, this is the big boo-boo area I was talking about, right? Which normally you'd wanna just sand it out and make it smooth, but you don't. You wanna keep sanding it until you get to it, and if you start to see metal here, that means it's still too low and you have to fill it. So we're gonna do this the right way. We're gonna keep sanding. So here we are, sand, 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 feather edging from the sides, getting all to go in there, a little bit bigger there. This, I think I told you, I'm using 80 grit sanding paper for this. See, as we're sanding, all the guide coat's leaving, which is good, except for here. This son of a bitch does not want to go away. We want it gone. So because I don't feel any flat spots yet, we still have a lot of filler, we're not hitting metal, I'm gonna keep sanding. When you teach people how to do body work, you always say, sand until you see metal and stop, unless you're working with fiberglass or plastic. So I don't like where we're going with this. So you can see we're hitting the original body filler. What's nice about bikes is you can rotate them and see how that transition looks, which it looks pretty good on this. So I don't like this area because this should be feather edged more. So I'm just gonna take this down a little bit, and that might help us get to this. One thing I wanna show you, you're doing regular gas tanks like this, which is usually like a restoration or something of a regular motorcycle, not a super high value motorcycle. You'll see as I'm sanding, I am getting a little bit of sanding through at different levels. So technically, when you're sanding this, you wanna be at the same level. So the body filler should be sanding into the clear coat here, but not breaking through to the primer. And that would mean that it's all at an equal level. Very minute, but this one here, you can see we're breaking through in spots. So on a show bike, you sandblast all the paint off, you strip this whole thing down, and you fill the entire tank. Gets filled and skim coated, and then you block it. And that's the way you get rid of all that waves and all those imperfections on a high-end tank. This is not $1 million bike, but we want it to look nice, which it will, and we're not gonna go through all that. So you can see here, what ended up happening is, I got it to feather edge where I want it here. I kind of like the transition here. It's still low, there's still low spots there, but because on this crown, I'm hitting metal, I don't wanna create like a jagged bump or a flat spot. So I'm gonna probably stop there. I got a metal here showing. I could probably sand this a little more, which I'm gonna try to. When you're doing motorcycle tanks and fenders, it's almost, well, it is the opposite on a car. On a car, you really don't want to create any mounding because it's really hard to get rid of it. And a mounding on a car, especially on a classic car, you look at like a 40 Ford or something, and you stand behind it or in front of it and you sight it and you look down it. The car is supposed to go like this from front to back, nice, right? But if you mound each panel is gonna mound out, and mound out. So when you look at it, you'll see that stuff. So that's why you wouldn't do it on a car, but on a bike, you want that tank to have a nice crown and radius, which this one does. I do not want to go any farther there. I normally would sand this, but because we have to make this little edge here, which is kind of wanky, it actually was already body worked and it's not where it should be on this side. So you could see there's a pinch weld here, which I don't like pinch welds on motorcycles. Like the first thing you do when you customize a bike is get rid of those, but this is factory. This is what the original bikes would be, so you want that. On the factory one, when you're building a custom bike, you'll see they don't have pinch welds here. They're actually smooth or rounded. So now we're gonna have to make that side there. What I did is I put a piece of tape here to create a straight line where the body line is to go to that pinch weld. And now I'm just going through and sanding it, trying to sharpen it up. I'm using one of our rubber squeegees. It's just a firmer, more squared off edge. And I'm just trying to bring it in because what this does, it goes flat, slight radius, and then to it. And what I'm trying to do is create the depth from the pinch weld to the top. That's why I didn't sand this more on the body work that we're doing. Because what we're gonna do is once we get this to metal where it's at now and we recreate that first flare, we're gonna come back and try to match up the thickness of this edge here. So we'll have to look at this side here and see how thick it is, which towards the front it tapers out, towards the front it gets thicker, towards the back it tapers out, which is kind of cool. And for us, it does the same thing. I do see I want to bring it down a little bit. So I'm going to sand As I'm looking, there's like a little spot here that I just want to sand. It looks like it's supposed to be a little more, which it is. And then now we'll peel our tape off. Now look at that, and it's really not bad. So whenever you're doing body work on anything, cars or bikes, you want to create sharp points, right? Even though these edges are radius, you go to it and you create a razor sharp line right here. What that does is it makes you be able to see it being straight a lot easier, makes it straighter. And then once you're at your final stage of sanding, like say, we're going to take this from 80 to 180 to 220, kiss it with 320, but I'll probably with 220 round the edge at that point. This way the whole time we're doing it, it's nice. So I'm just trying to keep this edge at the same degree, which it is. And now I want to make sure that this is a little bit smoother. What I notice is where the filler is supposed to feather edge with the tank, it's not feather edging, which means the filler is taller than the tank. So you want that feather edge so you know your right height. Same thing here, at this angle. I didn't put a mask on. I should have a particle mask on, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't be able to hear me talk, and I'm not creating a lot of dust right now. And I'm glad I'm doing this tank because Lewis is going through hell on a car. We had a car come in, which the minor stuff is always worse than major stuff. When you have paint peeling off of it from bad preparation, you can't, to fix those areas is a nightmare because it always grows. And so he had to fix a trim, put a piece of tape on the mold, on the body to tape it off. And when he peeled it off, the paint came right off the body of the door too. So then it usually starts this ongoing issue, a lot of stress, which we don't want. We're trying to eliminate stress in life here. So I'm using this block now. It's a little firmer and you can still curve it, which is nice, but you got to be careful because with the firmer block, you could easily put flat spots in here. And we're trying to avoid that. So because I have everything really close here now, and I still have these two low spots, very small, minute low spots. Normally, what I like to do, I hate to fill there. Because when you fill there, then you sand it. A lot of times, now you're sanding at different feelings. Like the body filler's harder, softer, whatever. And as you're sanding it, one's going to sand faster, which usually puts issues into it and makes waves, so it's a pain. But because it's so small, I'm just going to mix up a tiny bit of filler, put it just over those areas, and then we're going to hit this one spot with 80, 180, 220, but and we'll be on there. Hold on. I did it again. When I mixed up my filler, I kind of mixed up a little too much because I'm used to doing bigger things. We've been doing more cars than bikes lately. I mixed up too much filler, and I decided to just do the tight wipe. So I couldn't show you because it's hot or warm out, so the stuff dries quick. But all it is, you take your little filler, take your squeegee, and you press really hard, and you push it across, and that fills in any little pinholes or dots or anything that's in there, or scratches rather, not dots. The reason I did that, well, I always do it, but with this filler here, it's definitely more porous than the other stuff, and even with the higher end fillers, I always do a tight wipe. The difference is a lot of people, because when you do a tight wipe with fillers, it takes longer to dry. A lot of people use a 2-part putty, which to me is just an extra process to have another product here to do it when the stuff usually works just as good. If you want a 2-part putty, go ahead and use it. Another reason I got rid of it is because some of the stuff sands really easy, like dust, and some of the body guys, not all of them, but some of them get really, really lazy, and they start using it in areas they shouldn't. And it's not made to go on thick. It's made to fill scratches and little tiny pinholes and things like that. So to eliminate our problem of people using it on the way it's not supposed to be used, we got rid of it. But anyway, that's it. Tight wipe. We're gonna let that dry. We're gonna hit it again, 80, 180, 220, and 320. Sorry, I'm right by the compressor. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm gonna re-guide coat it now. So I sanded it again with 80 and 180. I actually did 180 twice. We're gonna guide coat it. This time I'm gonna use the Mirka guide coat. And remember, everything we do, we try to put links in the description of our YouTube videos, or if you go to atomiccycleworks.com, we have our copycat link. You can go on there and buy the same great products that we use. So you can see right out of the gate, the Mirka guide coat is not as dark as the U-POL spray guide coat. I like this because it sands a little easier. That stuff's kind of aggressive, like gumming up the paper a little bit. But if you are not a visual, or you are a visual person and you need more of a contrast, you make your own decision. So here we go. Now we're gonna switch over to 220. So we did 80, 180, and now we're at 220. I'm still using my squeegee. There are a couple sanding blocks I like better, but I think, as I said, they're missing. So now we're just gonna go through, again, zero pressure, right? Right across, no pressure at all. This is showing you all your high spots and all your low spots. Right out of the gate, you could see it sanded that there, that was high. You can see anywhere there's sand scratches is low. So this is 220, and I'm just trying to get rid of the 80 grit scratches now. Not really trying to do body work per se as much because it should be already close. You can see there's 2 high spots. So those, no one ever even saw those in there. That's how minute it gets when you're trying to make things perfect, but they were there. Okay, so now that's 220. We're gonna guide code it again to 320, right? Do I do this all the time? No. Am I only doing it for YouTube? The reason why is when everybody should do this, it's cheating. It's basically cheating. You're showing yourself where any of the issues are, makes your job easier, and when you're learning, it's very smart to do this. So now we're gonna switch over to our 320 grit paper. Always pay attention to your primers. Some primers, like our UV primers, they say to only go to 220. Some people worry about going too fine with the primer to go to a 320, but we're gonna use our automotive, the Velorum 200 primer, which is a really good primer for collision and stuff like that. Not high build, really thick, but as you'll find on this, if we get our body work to 320 and it's good and there's no imperfections, put that primer on it, sand it nicely, move to the next step. So here we go. We got it guide coated, no pressure. We're looking pretty good. So you can see all the guide coat's gone, except for you can still see there. That was where those dents were that divots that I filled. I scuffed it with a scuff pad to take the guide coat out. But as soon as I put the filler on it, it kind of mushed up, so it's still dark. So it looks like it's a wave, but it's actually not. So we are good to go. I'm gonna take this and just go over it by hand now. And what I'm just trying to do is make sure all of our 180 and 220 grit scratches are gone. And I am gonna go through and go right around here with 400. I'll show you. Not concerned about making it flat or anything. I just want to make sure that we have this sanded because we have to prime it and we don't want any of our primer to not stick. So what we're going to do, we have to primer our body filler, the bare metal. Our primer is a direct to metal, DTM, direct to metal. So that will be good over this metal. And we're going to move to taping it off for primer. But first we're throwing away all of our old sandpaper. Putting our stuff away. You'll hear a lot of places say never blow off your body filler because if there's pinholes about to break through and you blow it off, you'll reactivate those or open up those pinholes. Personally, I like to blow it out, get rid of the pinholes and fix it so you don't ever have to worry about it coming back. Okay, so I'm gonna take some Prep Sol. This is a pre-clean solvent-based. You have solvent-based cleaners and water-based cleaners. Usually when you're doing a car or bike, you use both. And believe it or not, the water-based is more aggressive than the solvent-based. I don't want to get this on our body filler or on the other stuff. I just want to get it over here. And I'm gonna just clean this off. Okay, so now we're gonna prime this. I'm using the green tape. Green tape should be used on this job because of the price range. If you look at every single thing we're doing, you try to take the right chemicals and products and use it for that price point. So if you look at different tapes, you have yellows, greens, tans, all different colors, right? Green is pretty much the best. Sticks really good. If you put it on chrome wheels or billet wheels and you leave it on there, it usually comes off, even if it's in the sunlight. Yellow, not so much, but each one has a different price point. Obviously, tan tape is usually, depending on the manufacturer, pretty much the cheapest one you're gonna get. We have green here in 2-inch that we're gonna do. Now I'm gonna tape this off because I don't want primer getting all over this tank. If it did, we'd be able to sand it off because we are gonna sand it and paint it, but let's not make a big deal about this. So if anybody you ever hear someone say, it's okay to hardline primer, I want you to do me a favor and punch it right in the face because it's never okay to hardline primer. Even if you have to do it like this, we're going to create a soft edge just so it's not a hard line. And even at this, it's a little much for me, because anytime you put any sort of hard line in a primer, it's there forever. It's permanent, el permanente, right? So what I am going to do is I'm going to use this, I'm rolling it to create a softer edge. Well, I'll show you when we do it. I am going to mask off the bottom up here. So you notice on factory tanks like this, they're not painted on the bottom. If you look at when we do like custom bikes or something like that, the underneath has to look just as good as the top. So there's a lot of stuff that people don't realize the price difference when you're doing high-end stuff. And yeah, when the tank's on the bike, you don't really see a lot of it, but sometimes you do. If you get up underneath there and you look and it looks like this on a show bike, they're gonna take some points away from you, and you kind of don't want that. And again, because we're painting the whole tank, you're gonna still have to sand the whole tank. If there was overspray from the primer, it probably wouldn't be the end of the world, but this is just a good habit to get into to keep yourself from getting lazy. And having problems. Cameraman Lewis. Okay, so this is good enough for primer. Let's mix up some primer. We're gonna get stirring. Sorry, it's gonna be loud again. Everything we do is loud, so if you wonder why I'm deaf, there's constantly noise. Compressors and mixers and grinders and da-da-da-da-da. All right, so we are going with that. Let's get this started here. We're using a 2.0 PPS cups. We did switch to the other ones. Is this that? I thought we had some here. Oh, we do. The vented ones, which are here. So see these? These are the vented PPS cups. They're the newer style. We switched to those, although that one's not leaking. We had a lot of them where the vents were leaking, so we kind of went back to these ones. I actually like those better because they look cooler, but the lids were harder and they leaked. And everybody forgot to shut the vent off. They turned the gun over and it would pour out. Okay, gray, surface sealer, start, can mix, good to go. Okay, we are using VPS 200 Valorum Gray Surfacer Primer. 2 years ago, I would have told you it sucked because I didn't like that it was thinner, but it dries a lot faster. And if you do your body work right, you don't need to hide anything. So just make sure your body work is where it should be. This works incredible, dries fast, and is very hard. Boom. So now we're gonna use our very expensive primer gun. We're probably the only shop that's using a Supernova for primer. I gotta put my mask on, so you're not gonna be able to hear me. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray from this angle so we're not going up into the tank and creating a harder edge. And I wanna get 2 to 3 nice coats on here, nothing super wet, just enough, and then we'll see if the body work was good enough that the primer is good enough. So we actually ended up having, I don't know, 4 pinholes. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this primer dry. I'm gonna fix it, and then reprime it. And we're gonna move to paint, and maybe we'll do a video on painting this one. You can see here by feather edging it, we don't have a hard line here, which is really nice. What a hard line does, when you hear me say that, is someone will put a piece of tape down, they'll primer up to it, and the tape will build up and then they'll sand it. But because they're at 2 different planes, they're at 2 different hardnesses, when you sand them, they never sand together, so there's always ridge on it. And you'll clear coat it and you'll see it. And we've been through it a million times over years, and people have told me it's not gonna happen, and then it does happen. It's just like sometimes with a run. I had, actually, it was funny story. My friend, Cliff, who was our airbrush artist for years, God rest his soul, he was painting a Corvette, did some custom checkerboards on it. And I don't know if it was the first one he clear coated, but he wanted to clear coat himself. This is when he was working for my buddy Tommy over at Highway Service in Portland. God rest his soul too, another one, being you. So anyway, he wanted to clear coat the car. He clear coated it after he did all these graphics on it and ran it everywhere. And I said, I know you don't want to hear this, but you gotta take it all out or you're gonna see them. They're huge runs on top of graphics. Didn't want to hear it. Sanded it, cleared it, and no matter what you did, you could always see something there. And especially when you cut it, when I say cut it, when you sand the finish of the clear coat really flat, the flatter you go, the more you're gonna see. Because the closer you get to perfection, the littlest things show up a lot more. Like if you look at a car with orange peel all over it, you're gonna miss a lot of things, versus if you have a car that looks like glass, it's like looking at a mirror. You'll see a fingerprint, a spot, a chip, any of that stuff. Please, if you like this video, remember, like, share, subscribe, follow, ring the bell. I appreciate it when it does. Lewis is in back of you guys going, ring the bell. And those of you who don't know who Lewis is, watch more of our videos so you see, because I keep forgetting. It's like a huge amount of our viewers are new viewers. So the returning viewers are growing, but we have constantly new viewers, which is crazy. So if you like what we did on this Kawasaki, ring the bell, come back for more. Join us on the next project. I'd love to see you again. Thank you.